Hi everyone, it's Anna here. Thanks for tuning in. So now that I'm out of the spiritual warfare period, um, I have the luxury to actually, reflect on a lot of things that I had to do and face navigating this path. And it's given me a lot of clarity, and not just uh, about me and navigating this path, but discussing it with others and how they've navigated this path. So the intention of this video is to provide clarity as always, and to unshame things, because I know people say we shouldn't be comparing, but I actually think we should. We should compare things. That's what discernment is about. But we shouldn't project anything onto others because paths look different. But at the same time, we should actually see it clearly to provide clarity and really unshame things for anyone, navigating this path, right? So where I've landed with all of that is that um, there's a big misconception that when you are born into a certain family, you automatically have to face the entire ancestral demonic stronghold, that you automatically have to be the generational curse breaker. And I'm seeing that it's clearly not true. There are people who are not doing that. They are simply facing um, their own personal shadow on this path. So, yes, when you are born into a family, you do inherit certain traits. You do have certain genetic predispositions. For example, you would also maybe have a tendency towards anxiety because your own mother is quite anxious, right? So, this journey will still be difficult, right? But it will just be facing that, which is already very difficult. So I don't want to, I don't want to minimize anyone's pain. But it's an entirely internal process. The shadow lives in your own subconscious mind and personality. So this is, what for someone like me is more the surface level type of shadow work, um, where you can use a lot of different tools to help you on the way, right? And this is the shadow work that I started with. For the first 5 years of this journey, I definitely had to face my own personal shadow. And I did that whilst being in a relationship. It was a lot of relational work. And that's actually what I was calling the psychological awakening. I actually understand this now. It's because that was the part that was just facing my own personal shadow. And of course, clearing the predispositions that I inherited from my parents. But it's completely and entirely different to the next stage on the journey. That was a true spiritual awakening. That's how I define it anyway. That was actual craziness, complete chaos and craziness. And so I want to dedicate this video to the people who are going through that absolute chaos and craziness, to try to define things a little bit better and try to empower you and really validate that you are not doing anything wrong. It's just that the task is different. So, it makes sense when you think about it that not everyone, and thank God, not everyone has to face this, because it's intense, it's crazy, it's insane. And not everyone is ready for this. And I know we can argue. I know that when I was going through the crazy phase, I don't think I was ready for this. So, the lower ego doesn't think it's ready for it, but I'm just talking at a soul level, at a spiritual level. This is what you chose to do because you knew you could do it, you knew you could face it. And you also knew that it was what you needed at this particular phase of your own spiritual evolution to evolve, to grow even further. So the portion of the generational curse breaker that takes you to the crazy level is also linked to your own evolution. So it's not as if you're taking that on because you're so much better than everyone else, and you're already perfect, so you can do this. It's actually not how it works at all. It's actually linked to your own evolution. And even though you don't feel that strength, because you haven't, reconnected to spirit and fully embodying that level of soul light yet, you knew that for you to grow spiritually, you needed something extra. So you could say that, the personal shadow work, which is, proportionally actually as hard, because, these are, if the generational curse breakers, are the older soul, the advanced souls, then the personal shadow work is the younger soul. So for them, it's proportionally as shattering. And I know because I've observed that, discussing it with various people and helping various people on this path. So the actual pain is the same. I just want to make that clear. It's just that the level of insanity and the level of external warfare is different. So facing the personal shadow is facing your own personal slice of the family pie. Becoming or being or putting your hand up at a spiritual level to be a generational curse breaker is actually taking on not just your own personal slice. Obviously, it's part of it. You're taking the entire pie. You're facing the entire ancestral line shadow that has taken the form of an egregore. An egregore is, a thought form of all the traumas and wounds and shadow of the entire ancestral line. But for all intents and purposes, it's a demon. It's a demon. It's a real conscious entity that is parasitic and predatory, and that will not let you go without a fight, because its entire survival is based on continuing to feed on the trauma of everyone in the family. So of course, it doesn't want a generational curse breaker to win and to do this. So it will bring everything they have in their arsenal to try to destroy you. So it's not because we call it an egregore and we view it as the shadow of the ancestral line that it minimizes what it is. It shouldn't be underestimated. This is not a game. This is real. But when you understand the distinction between people who are facing their own personal shadow and the generational curse breakers, you can understand why there's a bit of like conflict happening, where the people who are only doing their personal shadow work, they're just like, well, they're looking at people like us and they're like, well, what are you doing? You're doing it wrong. Like, no, it's not a demon. No, it's your own shadow. It's just you. And then there's people, on the generational curse breaker side of things that we look at how seemingly it looks easier for others and feel like, you're doing something wrong. There's something not right. You are inadequate. It can bring some shame. It can bring some, like, you think you're becoming crazy because it's that insane, the level of stuff that you have to deal with. But on the other hand, I can see how people who are only facing their personal shadow, they might also feel inadequate because they're thinking, well, I don't have these crazy spiritual warfare stories, so what am I doing wrong? So, it goes both ways. And I've personally been guilty of projecting the craziness onto these people who think they have it all figured out. But I can see it's just different. It's just completely different, and we just don't understand each other. And it's only now, after I guess 2 years of peace, that I'm able to reflect on it and understand the difference fully. So coming back to the generational curse breakers now specifically, this is those who are actually going to face spiritual warfare. They're going to be talking about spiritual warfare, and other people who don't go through that are not going to understand it. They're not going to understand. I know that some people have asked me, actually, what do you mean by spiritual warfare? Because that's not what they have to deal with. And that's fine. It's just different. To be honest, when you go through the spiritual warfare and the generational curse break path, there's no spiritual ego in it, because you will be broken to such a level that you're not going to feel crash hot about it. Like, the people who are truly on this path and facing this, I can recognize them by their energy. There's a solidity and a strength to them, but there's also a profound humility, because the lower ego has been well and truly broken. And that's part of the path. That's actually what's required to fully face and vanquish that ancestral egregore, and to fully embody the level of spirit that you're meant to embody. So the spiritual warfare, the difference is that it's actually externalized. So how I was saying that the personal shadow is more internalized, you know that you're dealing with spiritual warfare because it's externalized. So you will encounter a lot of paralysis and all sorts of crazy demonic dreams, waking up every day thinking that you've actually tackled the battle at night, and waking up completely exhausted. In fact, whilst you're going through that crucible, you're going to be exhausted all the time. I don't know, I had some crazy experiences where, I was feeling myself dragged, like whilst going through sleep paralysis, through my bed. There's some people I know who were feeling like an entity actually sitting on their chest and trying to choke them. So it's trying to create that fear, right? But it's also externalized through other people. So you will feel like you can't escape, like that entity is following you everywhere, and you actually feel that it's the same entity looking at you through all these different people. And I know that I've spoken to enough of you to know that that's what all of us experience when we are facing that it's not even about the people. They are literal puppets, and it's that entity working through them. And that's why it feels like sometimes it's so strange. You're like looking at the same entity, even though it's a completely different person, right? So that what will be externalized. It will be crazy. It will be people coming at you from all angles, trying to weaponize your smallest weakness and to amplify it. It will, for some people, unfortunately, look like terrible and unjust legal battles where you might actually lose access to your children. It will feel unfair, because it is unfair. It is a completely different kettle of fish. And the actual purpose of that entity, like I said, is to destroy you, because they don't want you to rise into spirit. They want you to give up. They want you in either bitterness and hatred, or in despair and victimhood. And when they have you in there, like you're still locked and looping, right? And obviously it takes time. You can't bypass any of that. Like I said, it's not a game, it's real. You cannot bypass that stuff. Trying to bypass it is not facing it. You'll have to keep doing it over and over again. So the despair, the bitterness, the anxiety, the fear, the tiredness will all have to be felt and processed slowly. It's a slow process. It will have to be fully felt and processed until it no longer has a hold on you. There is actually a difference. What I've noticed from talking to many of you guys is that my spiritual warfare was very much physical. So the last time that I had to face and to use the correct terminology, it's actually been called by Steiner the lesser guardian of the threshold, and other esotericists have been calling it the dweller of the threshold. So like I said, that lesser guardian of the threshold is different whether you're facing your own personal shadow or the entire ancestral line shadow. But even for those who are facing the entire ancestral line shadow, it is also different. So for me, it was physical. It was an external battle. The last battle was actually facing my own father, and it was a physical, violent battle. somehow that's what it needed to happen. It had to be broken like that, because I believe that physical abuse was the main issue in my ancestral line. Physical abuse on my dad's ancestral line, and submission and a lack of standing up for ourselves on my maternal line. But there are others who are going through that battle, and it's a much more covert, insidious, and psychological battle. And it's much worse. I mean, we all know that where abuse is concerned, physical abuse, you can recover a lot more quicker than emotional and psychological abuse, right? So when the battle is like this insidious breaking of you psychologically, that's when you might actually go through a legal battle in the legal system and face things that are just insane, that end up being completely unfair and crazy, where you will lose the thing that you cherish the most. Because if the egregore can't have you directly, they might bypass you and hit you where it hurts the most, which is, you know, your sense of wanting to protect your children. And it will be this insidious voice whispering all sorts of things every time you're trying to break the hold, right? It will be whispering this despair and victimhood in your head, like, look where you at. You're nothing. You've lost your children. You haven't been able to protect them and provide. Like, it will be this insidious voice that you constantly have to face and break. And the way you win, regardless of how it works, right? Regardless of if it's an external battle or an internal psychological battle, is by remembering your power in spirit, embodying this spiritual warrior archetype, which is obviously a lot easier to do when it's externalized and it's a battle, physical battle, but you can also do it internally, and reminding yourself over and over again that entity has nothing on you. And that's why it does that, actually. That's why it's trying to break you so hard. It's because subconsciously it knows it's nothing. Like, if you manage to crack the code and fully step into this fiery spirit, it loses its grip on you and the entire ancestral line. So that's why it's trying everything to break you. It's that last attempt to try to keep a hold on the ancestral line. You know, it's losing its food source, to put it simply. So the process of the generational curse breaker is a slow process of facing all of that, which is much bigger than you, much bigger than your own personal shadow. It's intertwined in your own personal shadow too, though, so it's not a completely separate thing. But it's much bigger than you, and it's crazy, it's insane, it's chaos. And you have to come to a place where you remember how powerful you are in spirit. This is the power you have, and this is why, you know, the spiritual warfare is actually proportionate to the amount of light you're meant to embody. And you have to remember that, because if you can crack that code of embodying that strength from inside and come to a place where you look at that entity and it has no hold on you, it's nothing. You can see it for what it is, a backed out, scared demon. Then you win. Then you crack the code and the access is lost. So that's what the difference is between the two. And that's why a lot of us don't understand each other, because it's just not the same. And, you know, we are living in a state of amnesia where we forgot what we took on before we came in. And of course, when you go through it, like, you want to make it stop. You will want to find the pause button. You'll want to be able to just rescind the contract. And unfortunately, it can't be done, because that's what you put your hand up for. But also, once you crack the code, you will be so thankful you didn't give up. You will be so thankful you didn't rescind the contract, because that level of power is something you take with you, on the other side. Like I said, this path is entirely connected to your own spiritual evolution. You're not a finished product, you're still evolving. So that strength, that level of strength that you're able to achieve in this life, you'll keep it. It's yours. You've earned it. I think it's also important for me to specifically say that, right? To reiterate it a few times, that it's actually part of your own evolution, because something that can happen is, because this path is so difficult for the gentle curse breaker, there can be a bit of bitterness and resentment that happens, and it's natural. Of course it's natural. It's just so hard. But that bitterness and resentment is the exact thing that is blocking you to make progress. So at the same time, whilst you can, have compassion for yourself for feeling these feelings, you also need to understand that you have to move beyond those feelings. That's the only way to actually make true vertical progress on this path, and to break that stronghold. Because you will know when it's done. You will know when you finally vanquish that ancestral egregore, because all of a sudden it will be peace in your life. Like, it was so crazy, it was coming at you from all these angles, and all of a sudden it's so peaceful. It's almost like you're bracing yourself for the next thing, and it just doesn't come. For months, for years, it's done. So the mindset is to understand what you're facing and to face it head on. To not lay down, to not give up, to keep rising, and to remember how powerful you are. You would have never chosen this if you were not this powerful. And also remember that when things get really crazy, it actually serves a purpose for you. Because that craziness can be the exact thing you need to shift, into this power, to tap into this power, this spirit power. Like, sometimes it has to go crazy for you to be pissed off and to really step into that righteous anger that's a powerful fuel for us. So even though that ancestral egregore, is trying to break you, like, that cannot be underestimated. Their intention is to break you, so they can keep feeding on you. But what they don't understand is that on a spiritual level, they are being used to push you so you can actually rise into your power. And that's the paradox. So I'm hoping that maybe in making this video, next time this craziness happens, instead of falling into victimhood and thinking, oh my God, spiritual warfare, I'm being attacked from all angles, understand that it's the ancestral egregore. It's here for you. And you can and you will vanquish it by doing shadow work on steroids. That's what this path is for the generational curse breakers. It's still shadow work, but it's shadow work on steroids. So even though it's an external entity and it's coming at you from all angles, it's still healed within. It's still processed within. And once you seal all access, once you pass that threshold into embodying a certain level of light, they can no longer access you. So it's shifting that victim mindset into the spiritual warrior. So that's what I had for you today. I'd love to hear from you guys, because I know a lot of you watching me have had crazy experiences. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you, your own stories, your own understanding and wisdom, actually, that you've uncovered as well, because I feel like we all have so much to share with each other, to come to a full, clear picture. Actually, something that I've missed and I want to add is that it's not because you go after the ancestral shadow, this egregore, that your ancestral line magically becomes healed. Um, I know that it's something that I had to reconcile afterwards, and that was very painful. But your family still have their own path, their own personal shadow. So it's so that egregore is vanquished, right? So it will be easier for them to do their work, but they still have a lot of work to do. And they might not be willing to do it, they might not be ready to do it. Um, you know, there's only so much you can do because this is a school. Earth is a school for our soul evolution. And so, you can't be doing the work for them. It would actually stunt their evolution. So, this is meant to be like the work that you've done is still it's still it's still great, for the collective, and it's still great for your ancestral line, but the expectation cannot be that you magically fix everything, which I know can be very painful, especially when, you guys, the generational curse breakers, I mean, you were born in dysfunctional families, so where people have suffered so much abuse, and of course you want, you know, it's a natural thing to want the pain um, to be alleviated for your family members. I want to honor that. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful to feel that, but that's just not how it works, unfortunately. And it will be part, I mean, at least for me, but I think it will be part of the past to release the attachment of that insane pain that your siblings or your mother might be carrying in my case. Release the attachment of that pain being dissipated because they have to do their own work. I thought that was an important thing to add here. So I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.